Everybody, and welcome to the Quarantine Diaries. Today is Thursday, 23rd of April. It is day 29, and I have the wonderful Libby Jonson from Truly Myrtle. And look at us, technology libs. We have
Pretty
come
good.
such a long way in 5 weeks, have we not?
I know it's been fantastic to actually experiment with some of these things that are like way over my head normally. I'm quite enjoying it all. It's good.
Yeah, it
How
is
are you
really,
this
really
morning?
good. I'm good. I'm good. Well, off air, we were both talking about the joys of working at home with sort of teenage children and husbands, and yeah.
I know
And,
everyone keeps
and I
saying
was
it's so
talking about that because
quiet.
both you and I work at home all the time.
Yeah,
So for us, this is, they're invading our workspace,
that's right. They're totally
isn't it?
invading my workspace. That's exactly right. And they have some sort of claim to it too. It's not that they're
Yeah.
invading. They think they belong here. So
And
that's
yeah, and the other thing, of course, as well, that we were saying too that makes us laugh is that, I mean, we do what we do all the time in this space, but mum, she's on call 24/7,
oh
regardless of what else is
yeah.
going on.
I know. I'm poised, waiting. There'll be somebody that will
Yeah.
be coming to need me shortly. So I have to
I
be
know,
with
I
it.
know. I'll have a dog whimpering or barking. If you see me mute and then disappear and come back again, I've had to let a dog in the room. I mean, that's just how it goes. Oh, honestly, it has been a crazy old ride. So since we caught up,
Yeah,
4 weeks ago. You've
yeah,
been busy. You've been very, very busy. We were able to sneak in some Skeins people and Quarantine Diary people into the toolbox through the back door there, which was
cool. Have you?
yeah, which was really awesome. But you've been
Yeah,
busy with wardrobe toolbox, which is keeping you out
yeah,
of mischief. And I have been getting people to share what their projects are that they love. What are their go-to projects? What are the things that their must-haves with their wardrobes? And the one that
yeah,
comes up again and again and again, there are two, are the floozies and the timely cardigans. So I thought we could
yeah,
talk about those today.
yeah, yeah. They are fun. They're fun cardigans, and it's funny, isn't it? When I'm designing things, it's hard to know when I'm starting whether or not it's going to be things that people really enjoy. But
Yeah.
I had a really good feeling about both of those cardigans when I was knitting them. I remember saying to Katrine when I was knitting Floozy, this is the Floozy I was knitting, and I remember saying to her before we released it, I've just got a good feeling about this one. It was so fun, and there's something about it. And I remember having a conversation with her, she probably remembers, and I was saying, I'm thinking we should maybe tell other dyers about it because I'm just thinking that it may be a lot of yarn that you end up having to dye. And she's like, okay. And then she's
Yeah.
saying, oh my goodness, Libby, I've never had to work so hard.
Oh, I know,
So
and we
you.
were, but we were the same. I mean, we'd had Sockmetition edition hadn't long come out, and it was the perfect commercial yarn for
Perfect. Yeah.
perfect. And
Yeah, I
it
keep
was,
seeing people make it with Sockmetition, and it's just their colors are beautiful together, and the
and it
texture
was
of the yarn.
yarn. It was just such a perfect fit, and I mean,
Yeah,
because of course Timely was out first, and then
yeah,
Fluky, and so I'd gotten all of my team had literally done. I mean, we'd gotten to the point where we had to commit to memory the meterages of the different sizes and the volumes
yeah,
and stuff that you needed for each one, because it was felt like every second person that came in the shop or had
yeah,
an online inquiry was,
yeah.
how much do I need for? It was, oh,
Yeah,
it's
and
amazing.
what's really funny about Timely, which is this little stripy one, I wear this one just all the time. I've been
Yeah,
wearing it a lot lately. Is that people come up to me and they say, "I've made three," or
yeah,
"I've made a lot of people have made two," but they make it over and over. And
yeah,
when I was thinking about this cardigan, like I designed this. This is my second one because I designed it first of all when I was still living in the UK, and I was doing a series on my blog, and I would be making a whole outfit in a month, and then I'd have
yeah,
this kind of process, and it was kind of crazy, but I really enjoy doing it. And at the end of the month, I'd have a big reveal. And at the time, I was thinking, I want a little cardigan like Nigella Lawson wears. That's what I was
mm,
thinking. I wanted a little high neck that didn't collapse. I just wanted
yeah,
it to be able to sit and have this neat little layer over the top. So that
yeah.
was my inspiration for it. And my original one was actually fairly plain stripes. I used some cotton wool from Rowan.
Mm-hmm.
I still have it in my wardrobe, but it was fairly plain. But then I just cannot remember why I decided to do it with a variegated yarn in between the plain
Yep.
stripe for the real release. But
Yep.
it was just so much fun to make it like this,
Yeah.
and it's made it a much more versatile knit for me because it has so many colors in it.
Yeah.
But I tell the story about both of these, actually. When you're thinking about making them, there's just and making any sort of cardigan that you're thinking that you're going to wear over and over. If you're aiming to produce a cardigan that's going to be like a staple in your wardrobe, it's really helpful to just think about a couple of things before you start, as tempting as it is to just cast on.
Yeah,
I know how tempting it is to just cast on. But one of the things that you want to think about is the colors that you're going to use, because obviously both of these cardigans, I've got my original floozy, and then another one that we did for the photo shoot as well, which Katrina and I worked on those colorways. And then I've got the floozy 2, where we went for a totally different palette, much more muted colors. But we worked hard at the idea of the colors, and we did a lot of swatching to work out what was going to work together. But it doesn't always happen the way you think it's going to happen. And if I think about the floozy, I've told this story before, but I got the yarn from Katrine. We decided on a gold. We wanted a sort of a gold coloured cardigan, and she put the red speckle in it, which I realised quite quickly once I started swatching that was successful. I loved the way that was working. But what I thought was originally that I thought I would use more red. In my head, it was a little more red. But as soon as I started swatching, I saw that, oh, no, I absolutely cannot have too much red. It's too powerful. And I realized I needed more cream because it just needed to take up more space because it was more muted. So I've swatched a lot for this just to work it out. And the funny thing was, when we did the huge knit along, I completely by chance, really, we staggered the release. So we released the details of the pattern, and then 2 weeks later released the full pattern. And the idea was that people that ordered yarn from Katrine, from Yarn Floozy, for their kit would have time to receive it, and then we could all cast on together. That's why we did it. But in actual fact, it was absolutely genius to do it like that, because that everybody got a chance to try out their yarn before they started. And so I had a big Ravelry group at the time that had a thread all about the floozy, and people were swatching. So they'd get 3 yarns together and they think, oh, these are going to be lovely. And they'd start swatching, and I'd hear things like, oh my God, I've just made a Gryffindor color way or something, or oh my goodness, these are my school colors, what was I even thinking? And they'd start knitting the colors, and really quickly in a little square realize that it was a disaster. What they thought was going to be fantastic was a disaster. And I think a lot of people started to appreciate that, oh, I can save myself a lot of time and bother by actually knitting a little bit just to see how the colors are going to go. So that was quite enlightening for me as well, to see how well that worked for everybody else. But then equally, with my Timely cardigan, when I did eventually order the yarn for the new one, I ordered it online. And so I had never seen it in the flesh. It wasn't a case of picking it up at a show or anything. And when the skeins arrived, they were purple. They were just, one of the variegated skein was super purple. And I haven't really done a lot of purple. I do intend to do more, but I didn't plan for purple. And it was really a lilac, actually. And I just thought, oh, no, I'm not sure that this is going to work. But I started swatching, and what I realized by the time I'd done my gauge swatch was that actually it was going to be fine. It was absolutely going to be fine. And the barley color toned it right down. And the purple sort of faded away. And I'm not sure. I think there must have been a big clump of it in the skeins, just the way it was dyed. But the effect, once it was knitted, is so different. But I may have, if I hadn't have done that swatch to work out my colors before I started, I think I would have been freaking out as I knitted. Is this going to work? Is this going to work? And it takes away so much pleasure from the knitting when I'm got my, heart in my throat thinking, this is not really working. So I think having a little think about the colors, and not just thinking about the colors, but getting out your colored pencils, or having a go with actually knitting them is a great idea. But of course, you could also go and have a look on like Instagram, if you did a hashtag search, or Pinterest or Ravelry or somewhere, look for examples where other people have already made it.
And that's where,
and then you'll say,
with both of these now, see, this is the beauty with both of them. I mean, Timely's what been 3 years this year?
Yeah, something like that.
3 years this year. Floozy, and 1 and 2 years.
Yeah.
There are so many examples out there now where you can actually see what people are doing. But with Timely, see, like Timely was huge. One of our staff, I think she's knitted about 4 of them, and it was really wonderful because it was she just loved it so much. But she's a wonderful knitter, and she's really quite adventurous, and she would knit different colors and different combinations. And we would so often, for us, you know, we'd get people come in and they'd have a couple of skeins of something that they'd bought from Knit August Nights or from a show, wherever they'd been, and they'd be quite, you know, loud.
They bought it in the spur of the moment and they felt excited. And then go home
and those are the yarns that will often speak to you. And in fact, they don't speak, they shout. And they've been shouting away. You've had them sitting there and they thought, right, I've got enough meterage, I'm going to make this cardigan. And then they arrive into us and they go, we don't know what to put with it. And one of the things I found really interesting is because we do have, you know, a number of options, like especially once Sock Matician came on board, we had a good option there, but we did actually have a couple of other options, and we used a lot of Bohemia sport in those earlier days. But one of the things that I really loved working with people was actually picking out, I mean, you had the neutrals, you had the soft greys, and you had the neutral beiges, and also the negative colors, like saying to people, well, actually you can use a charcoal, which will actually push those stripes out as well. And so you know, the lighter colors will pull the color back, but darker colors will push the color out. So we would talk about stuff like that. But then it was just really, really nice to sort of say to people, well, actually, how adventurous do you want to be? You've already got something that's really loud. Let's pick a color out of this and match that instead. Let's not play with a neutral. Let's shout it. You know, how do we do that? And it's actually a lot of fun. It's the most fun to color.
I think that's what's made these cardigans so successful, because it's such a great opportunity to just have fun. I think, but I also think that it can help. I think also thinking about, what am I actually going to wear? I think that's something that's worth thinking about too, because I do hear a lot of people saying they've made things and they never wear them, which breaks my heart if they want to, you know, all that knitting, which I love a project I get to wear. But it's helpful to decide, are you the kind of person that is going to want to put, like, so you talk about the colors coming forward, those brighter colors really singing. Are you going to wear those brighter colors really singing? And I mean, is this a cardigan you're going to wear a lot, or are you quite happy for it to be one that you wear just sometimes? And if you're going for something that you just want to have that's a real neutral staple in your wardrobe, well, maybe not think about having these electric pops. Maybe then go the other way and pull those back a bit, so that it can go with lots of different clothes, and you can just wear it and no one's going to say, oh, that cardigan again. Oh, that cardigan again. Oh, you see, you really like that cardigan. But it's just starting to be a little bit self-aware about, what am I actually wearing, and why am I actually wearing it? Am I wearing it because I love it? Am I wearing it because I'm hiding? Maybe I should try not hiding for a minute and see how that feels. I don't know. I think it's worth having a little think about it. But the other thing to think about as well is the size, and choosing the right size that you want to wear. So that involves also knowing a little bit about ourselves. So it really helps to just take your measurements, understand what size you are, and not to be worried about the numbers themselves. Just try and let that go, and just see this as your framework that you're working with, and then looking to the pattern and thinking, what kind of cardigan do I want to make? Do I want to make something that is like Timely is one that is always interesting for me to see how people want to make it. So I designed it to be a little neat cropped layer that sat back with the neck up, and for a lot of people that works really well. But some people actually want a cozy cardigan, and so they deliberately choose a size that's so the original that I made had 2 inches of negative ease. That means the bust size was actually 2 inches smaller than my bust. So it doesn't really do up. It does, but it sort of is a little gapey, but it's not meant to do up. It's meant to sit back. But if you want a cardigan that does up, you're going to have to choose one that is a little bit bigger than you at the bust, or at least the same size. But I think sometimes that just takes a little bit of learning about, because I do see people who have made particularly this one, and they say it's just too big. And then we work backwards and we say, what did you decide to do? What size did you make? And it turns out that they sort of just went for the size that felt safe. And so they gave themselves 2 inches of positive ease. So the bust size was 2 inches bigger than them, which means everything's bigger. Yeah. And you end up with a cardigan that's sort of more like the one I've got on. It's just a little more sloppy over the top. But yeah, I think starting with knowing what size you are, and then having a little think about, what do I like to wear? What's already in my wardrobe? Maybe I should measure a couple of things in my wardrobe and just see what size they really are, and then compare them to my measurements. And I think starting from there is a good place.
That's also a really, really good piece of advice as well, because I know that I play around. I'm going to jump back since I'm yabbering. I play around a lot with different sizes and shapes, and I have wardrobe pieces that I love and I wear again and again and again and again and again, and that's exactly it. I went back, and one of the factors that I discovered with those pieces for me was a relatively firm or tight fitting sleeve. It was, the pieces that I really loved, that I wore all the time, whether it be a dress or a blouse or whatever it was. If it had a well-fitted shoulder and a sleeve, it was one that I often would go back to all the time, because I felt like it fit really well. And particularly when you're someone like myself who is bigger, so you're very, very conscious that depending on what you wear visually for people, I can easily gain or lose 5 to 10 kilos like that, depending on what I'm wearing. It's very easy. It's an illusion. So when I discovered that, actually that's interesting. I hadn't noticed that, but those were ones that were more flattering for me. So now when I start looking for garments to knit, particularly things like cardigans, for me, checking the shoulder and the sleeve is actually really important, because I know that if it's a floppy sleeve, it will just look unfinished on me and make me look so much bigger than what I actually am.
Yeah, and I think part of that as well, and not just that visual look, but also how it makes you feel, because I definitely feel more myself when I'm in stuff that's slightly more fitted, because I think I can just do anything then. I haven't got all this flapping fabric in the way. I kind of like to have my sleeves pulled up, and I'm just like, I can get to it. So it's almost... if I try and figure out how do I want to feel, or who am I really? And some days I like to wear, I've got some jumpers that are big and a bit more wingy, but they're definitely warmer. They're definitely on days where I'm feeling just slightly slower. So I think it's just about experimenting. I think it's trying to figure out, you're actually allowed to be the boss of yourself. You're allowed to be the boss of what you wear, and it's hugely empowering. For me anyway, it's hugely empowering to say, actually, I think today I just want to be this. And it takes me back to that time. I didn't even realize I was really doing it. If I think back to that time on my blog when I was making those outfits in a month, at the beginning of the month, I would have this idea of this woman that I would like to dress in my head. I remember one in particular, and I just thought, she has like a camera and she's a little bit artsy and she's got this whole photography thing going on, and what would she wear? And I was like, I look back and I think, isn't that funny? I definitely had this idea of this woman I was dressing, and I think that can be quite helpful to do that.
And that's why both of those, but especially timely though, is so valuable as an investment in a pattern. Because I've been talking often across the whole, one of the themes across the diaries is actually about not being afraid to make modifications and alterations, and how easy that is. And timely is like the perfect template for a million different cardigans, whether it's a cropped cardigan to go with a high-waisted skirt or jean and something else, or whether you add some length in it to actually wear it as something more cozy around the house. Are you going to design it with wear it with positive ease? Are you going to wear it with negative ease? Are you going to take the stripes out altogether and actually do some color blocking instead? It gives you that template, and I think that's one of the beauties of knitting something again and again and again and again.
I agree.
Is that you can actually modify that. I mean, like I've got Miss Jane on from Georgie. And I mean, I've got about 6 or 7 of these, and no two of them are the same.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
No,
I can do that with my designing too. I mean, if you think about it,
yeah.
a lot of designers do. They'll take a shell of something and then change it
Well,
up. I was
Stephen West
teaching
is
last year.
famous for it.
David West is famous for it, yeah. And
Stephen
he's
West.
fabulous at it too.
Yeah,
And you don't
yeah.
mind either.
Yeah.
It's kind of reassuring. I was teaching last year at Knit and Stitch here in Auckland, and a woman was at one of my classes, and she showed me her cardigan, and she said it's a timely. And I would never ever have guessed it was a timely. It was one color. She changed the band. I think she'd done something different at the hem with lace or something that it was totally different. And it was such a wonderful example for me to be able to say, this is actually this cardigan. And people, how can you do that? But there's so many ways. I mean, you've talked about, you can take out the stripes, you can add different trims to it. But the other thing you can think about is changing the yarn. And yarn has makes such a massive difference to how a cardigan's going to turn out. It's a really good reason to swap scraps with each other. See what your friend has been using and have a go with it too. I think I'm sure we've all got baskets of scrap yarn, little bits of skeins. And if you experiment on a little scale, you might understand more about what yarn's doing. But so this yarn that I originally used for this is a bamboo silk merino. It's really, it's quite smooth. It's really sturdy. It's a good sort of summery kind of weight. And for me, that's part of the reason why this has worked so well, because it feels like a mid-season, even late summer, or cool summer, depending on where you are in the world, garment. And if you want that kind of garment, then I would steer for something that has more of those plant fibers in it. So it's got a bit of wool to sort of hold it together, gives it a bit of spring, but it also has the bamboo and the silk. And so if you're looking at things like cotton or bamboo or linen, all those sorts of fibers can add that.
Wool linen would look amazing,
Yeah, and that can turn it into something a little bit more mid-season or summery. Whereas Floozy, this one is a merino silk cashmere. So and the proportions are different, but it's light and it's extraordinarily soft, but it's definitely got a fuzz and a halo to it. So it is it's just as the weather starts to cool, for me anyway, with this particular cardigan, it's definitely has an elegant look to it, this particular yarn. But, you talk about the sock mortician. I've seen so many beautiful sock mortician floozies, and they have another whole element altogether. They have taken that sort of snuggly factor to another level, I think. In
Bohemia Sport, again, there's been so many of them in Bohemia Sport, and you get that halo of the possum and
very feminine. It can be a very feminine look. It's a soft look. But the other thing I like about the sock mortician is it holds itself together pretty well. So it's still quite a sturdy kind of cardigan. I think you could take it off, put it down.
Yeah, it's got a higher angle of twist on the yarn, so we've actually done it quite deliberately in the construction, so it actually helps.
So that'll help with that too. One of them,
No, go.
I was going to say one of the floozies I saw, which just was absolutely stunning, was actually knitted in a woolen spun. I think she'd used Brooklyn Tweed Loft. Yeah. And so it was ethereally light. It was so light. The colours were really muted, but it was quite a woolly. It was it was definitely a handmade cardigan. I mean, it was beautifully done, but it just added, it's completely different, a completely different look to this.
So Floozy 2, and I've done this more with Floozy 2 than I have with Floozy 1. So Floozy 2 is the sweater or jumper version.
It's the sweater, yeah. So I've actually changed the numbers for this. It's got a different, it's got different ease through the body. It's just a little bit more roomy through the body. Yeah, and this with a slightly smaller neck.
So with that one, what I've noticed is that people have come in, and the one yarn that we've been selecting for people with that, and it does change that look completely, has been Southlander Sport, which is that more rustic.
Yeah, perfect. Because that's a lot more like that woolen spun. Yeah,
and it is so perfect in the sweater. I mean, it works in the cardigan, but it works so much better.
I think so, because this has just got a little bit more ease in it. So it's designed to be just a little bit looser on you and just like a light layer. So I imagine that in the Southlander Sport, I think what I would be tempted to do is go for a size that gives me a good amount of room around the bust, because it'd be reasonably light, I think, wouldn't it? It would have I have a feeling of being just a light layer, but I would want to still have my sleeves not baggy, but not tight. I just want a medium sort of sleeve for that, because you want to be able to wear something underneath it. And I almost be tempted as well. You could crop that off and it would look pretty good, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
I think if you could have layer underneath, like a shirt that's hanging down underneath and over a skirt or something. I think that the yarn has this incredible ability just to take you to another place. And until you are playing with it in your hand or seeing it knitted up, it's hard to imagine what that place is. So I am such an advocate of actually just knitting a little bit, just knit a little bit and see what it is going to be like.
And with the cardigan too, and with the cardigan you want sort of natural softness in the drape, so it makes sense to have something that is softer, or like as you said, plant-based, or that gives you that gentle drape. Whereas with the sweater, because you're already building in positive ease there anyway, sometimes actually having something a bit more rustic with a little bit more structure, particularly around the shoulder, and so then
it just falls away then, doesn't it?
Exactly, it falls and it sits, and it and I think cropped, that cropped in Southland, that would look fantastic.
I think so. I think it'll be great, and you won't feel too hot in it either. I think you'll feel like you just. And then with the colors, I think you just get the colors right. It has one of those things, I think, that would have the ability just to pull everything together for you, so that you could, I don't know, I think you could create quite a cohesive look with your whole outfit.
I just had a light bulb. I think you need to actually release Timely and Floozy, the modification toolkit, and then you could actually have all these different modifications.
That's quite a good idea.
And all different yarn styles, and say, look, this is.
Oh, you've given me a really good idea for something entirely new, actually. Yeah, that is a good idea.
I've been known to have them from time to time.
I keep doing, the more I'm doing, I'm making a lot of classes and things on a really regular basis now for this wardrobe toolbox, and I really am enjoying doing it a lot. I've just put together all the workshops for next month, and I had to actually, I have a little crew of people. I say, these are the feedback people, feedback, I need the feedback, please. And so I said to them, I've just made some classes for next month. And like, there's a lot of information in there, and I didn't know I had so much to say about this particular topic. Do you think it's too much for people? Are they going to freak out? So I arranged, I said, okay, I think I'll just somehow stagger it and stuff. But as I'm making this stuff, I'm thinking, I really like doing this and putting this content together. And what if I did this, and then I could do that, and I can see another whole arm of Truly Myrtle developing out of it. But especially these days when you can't actually teach in person, it's a really it could be a really fun thing for me to do. To do more stuff that's available online. So yeah,
and it'd be
you've given me a good idea
for you to do that than actually trying to teach children in lockdown, I would have thought.
Oh, it's preferable. Definitely, it's a preferable activity. My children are kind of just teaching themselves. My big teenagers are pretty good. They're pretty nerdy. So they like to do well at school, and they do tend to do fairly well. So they are fairly self-motivated, which is great. My little one is just reading a lot of Percy Jackson. She's read 4 Percy Jacksons, which is amazing because it's the first series that she's just run away with. So we're just letting her read Percy Jackson, mostly with the odd bit of maths thrown in.
Take the guilt.
I did say to her the other day, I think we should do handwork. I've decided we need to do handwork as part of your curriculum because I want to make something for your cousin. So we're going to do handwork.
They do in the Steiner curriculum. So these
exactly. I went to the Steiner school for a while. So I did that.
So we talked about, both Floozy 2 and Floozy and Timely are all in finer weight full play yarns, and I know that there are some people out there that look at that and they go, oh no, an adult no.
I know it can seem really off-putting, but I think try if we get a chance, next time you get a chance to go somewhere where a designer has their samples out, try one on. Because you won't know the difference. It's just so delicious to be able to, like the one I've got on at the moment, this is 2 lace weights held together. So it's almost like a fingering weight. It's something about being warm without feeling like it's heavy. It's just such a nice feeling. And I think depending on where you live, you can get away with that for quite a lot of the winter. And it's also can be extremely flattering not to have such a thick piece of wool on you, because it just is thick all over. I really love fingering, and if you just get stuck in and make a kind of find spots in your day to knit where you unexpectedly always have something with you, or I think you can knock it out quite well. It's a mindset thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it is a mindset thing, because I've done a number of things both in 4-ply, and I've even done 3-ply, and I still do a lot in DK. And like I'm working doing the sport weight at the moment, it's sweater, and it's not phasing me in the slightest. But you do also have a really good selection of sweaters in those heavier weights. I mean, Toy is a real favourite of ours.
DK,
because it's a DK weight yarn. It's got some, and it's almost in a way very, very similar shape to Timely, except the sleeves are slightly different. But
I did pick it up actually.
No, that's fantastic. And we've done oatmeal, of course. Oatmeal was one that you did.
And another satin sleeve. Those satin sleeves are really flattering. We should talk about those. It's, I think that we should have it.
Yeah, we will probably really dive into them later, but both of those projects are one that are really good. Like if no one has actually knitted any of your designs, shocker.
And gingerbread. Yes, gingerbread's another DK.
Now, funny you should mention gingerbread. I was talking to Ethan from Outlaw Yarn the other day, and we were talking about with like different patterns that you've got, because I know so many people have got gingerbread as a sort of basic sweater in their collection, or they have oatmeal, but gingerbread was one that's been really popular.
That was a good one.
And like Timely, it is one that I think is like this template.
I agree.
Pattern. So one of the things we've been talking about.
Oh yeah, I've got that book.
Okay, but this was.
It's a beautiful, beautiful book.
Stunning book, and that's why we were just saying with gingerbread, you have the ability, and I'm just finding the right page. I didn't think about this. Here we go. So then you can change at the bottom.
Yes. You just throw something else in, and depending on the yarn you choose, that will really pop.
Yes.
Or it will just be this muted detail. That depends on the yarn, how crisp your yarn is. Those books are fantastic. There's another one that's really accessible. One day I should talk to you about all the books I have on my shelf, because there's another one that's really accessible. We could just talk every day, Maria. I'm sure we have plenty to talk about. But there's another one, and it's called Japanese Stitches or something, and it's quite an accessible, a lot of simple stitches that go through. And of those Japanese ones, I have a couple that I use a lot, because they pull up some of those quite simple but very beautiful patterns. Remember my Kate cardigan that has the little angles? I got one of those out of something like that, and that's a classic again, another set-in sleeve. But another one that I think is another DK one that is overlooked, but the people that make it write to me and tell me how much they love it, is Pearl. And Pearl is one I made with Outlaw Yarn. His name's gone out of my head. The Silk Merino.
Nix, wasn't it?
Nix, yes. And it's the same construction. It's very similar to gingerbread, the same sort of construction. It has a slightly wider shoulder, and it has the lace that runs down the front. But you don't need to do that lace. You could just the gauge for the lace is pretty much the same as the stockinette, so you could either replace it or leave it out. It has an I-cord around the neck. It has a nice scoop to the neck, and I put an I-cord, but you can swap that out. And it has an A-line shaping. Now, the A-line shaping is a really interesting shaping that you can play with putting into things, because it's actually really flattering.
I love the A-line.
Yeah, it's because it has the illusion of creating a waist, just the way it skims down your body, and it's extremely flattering. And Pearl, with all those little features, with the I-cord and the crop sleeves and the little bit of lace, it's very feminine, but you can turn it into something else if you want. But it is another one that's a really good base pattern. It's a nice shoulder, nice neck. So it's a good one, I think, for that.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw in oatmeal as well, because one of the things with oatmeal was the shoulder, because I'd never done that shoulder before, and it was quite a revelation for me. And I did. So
the armhole.
Yeah, and so
that was an interest. I went to town with that one. I tried something which I haven't done again with the double wrapping, and then the double. That was really. It's a very, very tailored. Yeah.
So when it comes to that armhole, I've knitted 2, right?
Yeah.
So that's 4 armholes. I haven't once managed to get to the bottom of those double wrapping and actually have the stitch count that I need at the bottom. But you know what?
I know, because if you lose your count, you're just stuffed.
I just got to the bottom. It doesn't
really matter.
Well, no, it doesn't matter. And see, I did the first one, and I was getting, having serious words with myself. And then I suddenly thought, you know what? I'll just keep going until I get round down to the bottom, and then I'll check roughly the hole, the number of stitches for the hole. If I'm within cooey of where I need to be, win.
Exactly. But do you know the other nice thing about that armhole? And if you do the simpler version of it without the double wrapping, you once you've figured out the mechanics of it, you could chuck that into a lot of things. Even if you knit the front and the back in pieces, seam those up, you've got the armhole ready to roll. You could do your top-down armhole. But the other thing you can do is once you understand how it works, and I always learn how things work by doing them, but then you can make adjustments reasonably easily in that armhole, because if you have a fuller arm at the top, you can allow for that by picking up more stitches, having it slightly longer through here, and then just it will create more of a curve to the sleeve cap. If you have less stitches, it's going to go in quite fast. So if you know you're rounded here, or you want more room in that shoulder movement, you can do that. It's just but it's playing with it first to understand, I see how this works, and this isn't too tricky. I'm going to go back and just experiment with picking up a different number of stitches, maybe for the next size up or size down or whatever. And it's quite fun once you start to understand how to make changes, how simple sometimes they can be.
And that deep V too was
it's great.
Really,
especially on you. I don't have a big enough boobs, to be honest, for that V.
No, I love it. And it was funny because the first one I knitted with more positive ease than the second one. I actually went down a size on the second one. And it's quite funny because the first one was knitted as written, because as I've mentioned many times on here before, I get told off by one of my staffers who keeps telling me, don't make any modifications if it's going in the top.
No, make modifications.
Whereas the second one, I actually, after I'd done the first one, and I still love the first one, I wear it all the time. The first one for me, though, was more of a sloppy Joe around the house.
Sloppy Joe is actually what my mum said they used to call their jumpers, the same sort of jumper and the same.
Whereas the second one, I actually did the next size down, and that is one that I will often go out and actually wear with jeans, and it can, and I can even pop a jacket over the top, or it's just a little bit, it's less negative ease.
It's a good look through here. I mean, I think if it's funny, isn't it? I think once you start figuring out where your areas are that work, and I did a course a few years ago with a woman, and it was just revelation to me to understand where I was proportional and where I was less proportional. I hadn't appreciated that, and that what it did was it confirmed for me why some things I felt more comfortable in than others. I'm like, I get it. But definitely, if you have a bigger bust, or if this is working for you, this area, show it off. Do something with it.
And with oatmeal too, what you can do with it is, because it is such a deep V, that you can then wear a beautiful little scarf or short, and it sits within V, and it's like a frame. It frames it. So then your eye gets completely drawn to this and to this. And particularly when you're someone like me who doesn't really want
the eye up.
I mean,
and I think most women feel more comfortable when the eye is lifted, especially as they get older. We don't really need our gaze. We don't really necessarily feel comfortable with the gaze drifting down. We're just quite happy with the gaze to come up. So I think that's quite a valid thing to do. But I think it comes back to that idea again of you're the boss. You're the boss of how you get dressed, and you're allowed to feel fabulous, and you're allowed to experiment with stuff, and you're allowed to look a bit bold. And to be honest, I think from what I can tell, the older we get as women, the less likely anyone is to be looking. So you might as well just do it and have fun, because life is too short not to.
I have a question in the chat here saying, what's the cardigan you're wearing? And a couple of them are wondering, is it kapua?
Yes, it's kapua. So this is from the Pacifico collection. This is a strand of 2 strands of lace weight. So I use it's shibui. And I think one is a silk merino and the other is the mohair silk. And so they're held together. So it's really fluffy. This cardigan, you can't see the halo so well, but if I wear this in public, I am always stroked. Always, without exception. Someone will stroke me. So I have to be in the mood for that.
Hey, no social distancing now. You can wear that cardigan without fear.
I could be safe, actually, in my stroking cardigan. It will be certainly a temptation for people, though. But yeah, it's really light. It's got this lovely drop shoulder. It's very comfortable, slim fitting arm, and it's just I like it. And I'm warm because it has the collar. So it's I feel warm in all the right places. Yeah,
Let's
it's lovely.
talk a little bit more. You mentioned before about the One Ocean collection. Let's talk. I mean, that was a wonderful collaboration. It looked like so much fun.
We have a ball. I was just talking to Marie this morning.
So
we have a real ball.
So how did that come about?
We can't really remember how we met properly. We were both in a mastermind sort of group, just a casual mastermind sort of group. And I think we came to know of each other completely coincidentally. It looks as if we started our businesses at exactly the same time. We're really similar in age. We have quite a similar background in terms of mothering and our kids and things. But we started our business around the same time. And so I sort of came to know who Marie was and she me. And she always seemed like this really neat person. I just thought she seemed really open and I liked her. She was a little bit cheeky as well. I'm always fond of someone who's a bit cheeky. So anyway, we sort of knew of each other, and then she approached me and asked me if she had a friend who was doing some sort of survey and said, would I be part of it? And I said, yeah, that's fine for knitting designers. And at that time, I just thought, I'd been toying with the idea of doing something with someone. And this is probably about 3 years ago now. And I thought it would be fun to share some of this with someone because it's pretty solitary, my work. You know, I do a lot at home. I love having my community. I think that's why I love my podcast so much, because I get to talk to people all the time. But anyway, I wrote back to her and I said, if you ever want to do something with someone, I'd love to do something with you. And to my surprise, she said she would. So we talked about it for about a year or so more, I think. And then we finally got our act together and found some space. And then we decided we'd put out a collection together. But we wanted it to be reflective of sort of where we were at. And where we were at was we were just that much older. And compared to a lot of the really trendy designers, we were just 10 years older. And we just both like to have fun. I think we're just, you know, life can be really stressful or serious, and I really like to have a laugh. And so we have that in common. And it was so much fun getting together. We did lots of talking on the computer and designing our own things. And then the first time we actually met was when I flew there last year to shoot the photographs. And it was as if we'd always known each other. It's a really funny. It's quite curious to me how you can meet people and you already know them. I find that quite an extraordinary
I had that with Stephen Berg. I mean, Stephen and I talked for probably 3 or 4 years before we actually finally met each other. And then when we met, it was I mean, the fact that we hadn't physically been in the same place together was
it's really funny. And the more we talk, the more we realize we have in common. It's quite funny. But we've had a ball. We photographed all that last year, and that was our first collection together. And we have been working on the stuff for the next collection. But now it's really unlikely that we're going to be able to see each other. I don't know when we'll be able to see each other again in the near future. So the second collection is just on pause at the moment till we figure out what's happening. So we'll keep working away at it and we'll be ready to go. And as soon as we can get together, Marie is due to come here for the next photo shoot. So she'll be down here and we can shoot it all together. So we haven't got a date yet. We had a date and now we've had to bump that date out a wee bit just because half the fun was doing it together. So we don't really want to be photographing it separately.
No,
we might have to, depending on what happens. We might have to, but we're going to we'll try and inch towards getting together, I think.
Oh, I'm sure you'll have a shed that you can quarantine around.
We have actually. It was called our whare. It's grim because we're on a rural property. So we have it's a little old worker's hut in the garden. I threaten my children that they're going to go and live out there, some of them at various times. So she could actually go out in the whare and then we could be photographed from a distance. We could do it actually. If she can get here on a plane, that's how that could be
absolutely. Gosh.
But we have got plans to do more together and because it's fun. It's a really fun collaboration,
Well, I think it helps like with inspiration. I think that's the thing with collaborations. I mean, we've done a few collaborations now with yarn, and it does. You tend to. I think it helps change your focus, and you tend to look at things slightly differently. And like what we've been talking about today. I mean, whenever I talk to somebody, I get these. That's an idea. We can do that. That'll be so cool. Yeah.
I know, because when you put two people together, boom, the synergy is just wonderful. So we have big ideas and plans and things, and it's really, really nice. I really enjoy it. But cross your fingers, there'll be another one soon. But we've also been talking a lot about the kind of yarn that we want to use in future collections, and that's been really interesting, looking at the way the market's changed and what people's finances are going to be like, and things like that. So we're really thinking about how we might do it in a way is going to work for people, I think, because I think things will change a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's funny that was a conversation you guys have been having. Like, I know it was really weird. There was a conversation because obviously for me, I spend half of my time with new product development having to pretend that I've got a crystal ball, right? So I spend a lot of time with the team at work, and because for us being a mill, it's not only having a yarn for a finished product at the end, but we also have to think about raw material, what the raw material supply lines are going to be like, and we've got so many yarns that we've adored that we've produced, for example, that we no longer can produce because the raw material supply gets interrupted, or it may not, that particular farmer may not run that flock anymore, or whatever it may be. So there were so many variables for us. And one of the things that we'd been talking about last year is, and this is before obviously all pandemic things, but one of the things that we'd seen coming into 2020 is we were definitely seeing a trend where people were being more careful. And I started seeing that at Mid August Nights. They were being very careful about their they would do a lot more project selection, because I just saw how much you were getting swamped at Mid August Nights. I mean, honestly, you were getting swamped, and how many people were purchasing a pattern and then they were being really selective about how they interpreted what yarn into that pattern. And so from there, I know that a lot of our new product development moving forward has been done with that in mind, because I think
that's interesting.
Have been quite cautious. So now that we've come into, we've now got this new COVID life that we're now living in, and we're having to restart our communities, restart our lives, restart our businesses. I'm actually quite relieved, because a lot of the new product development we have coming forward, and a lot of our existing products, have that mindset in mind. How do we enable people to get access to product? How can we make sure that we've got raw materials that we can, for the best part, source locally and domestically, so they can get yarn, and it's Kiwi yarn? How can it be most affordable for them? Because we don't want people to stop crafting, because we know how important knitting and craft is for people when times are stressful and tough.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree. It is interesting. I really have felt that shift too over the last year, and I can't quite put your finger on it, but there was something definitely in the air that made you think, actually, I don't know, is it because I think there's a lot of people that have been doing a lot of stash buying for a long time, and also perhaps pattern buying for a long time, and now they have this, and sometimes that can weigh on you a wee bit, I think, knowing that you have all this stuff. And so and then it's a matter of, is my stash going to work for these patterns, or are these patterns going to work for the stash? So there's always room to flesh it out slightly to make things really work. But it's a different way of thinking. It definitely is a different
And it's like coming full circle back to these two designs, or three designs we've been talking about, is that we have been encouraging people to have a look at these stashes if they have.
Yes, I think so.
Actually, because you don't have to make an entire project from stash, but you can certainly use that resource that you've got, and you can bring something in and introduce it, and then augment it with whatever you need around there. And,
I agree.
And there's been so much, I mean, they talk about that necessity is the mother of all invention, and boy, there's been some real invention.
We're good at that down here, though. We are good at that.
We are.
I think we're pretty resourceful people, New Zealanders. It is really interesting. I've been talking a bit about that on Wardrobe Toolbox, and I was taking the angle of, so learn about what's in your stash. Just have a think about what it is, and have a think about what different yarn does and how it's behaving, and what's that going to look like in a project, and be a bit of a detective in your stash, and start to understand the properties of the yarn, because you don't want to have any surprises. I mean, surprises can be good, but you don't want any nasty surprises. You don't want to make something and then realize it's not what you thought it was going to be. Go in kind of knowing where this is going to go, and I think we're sort of also that, and I feel like there's going to be an increased sense of less waste, and so this idea both waste in time and money, but particularly time, I think It's been really interesting.
This whole quarantine diaries has had me diving into, because I've got stash everywhere. I've got stash at work,
Yes.
and my stash is divided out into two very distinct groups. One group is stuff that I've pulled to knit. In the early days, I would pull together often project lots, and they were all bagged, all grouped together in project sizes, and then as time wore on, and we created skeins, and then the event took off, and so I got access to lots of really wonderful things. And then I have what I call the library, which is a selection of yarns, which mostly are single skeins, which are only there for the sole purpose for me to actually have as a reference point of a different kind of yarn, of how it will perform, what it's like, what the construction's like. So that is really like a work element. A library, and nice now though is that my old stash that I've had for 15 plus years, I've been diving in there to find
things.
And thank goodness I'm such a hoarder, because I would never have any content for the quarantine diaries if I wasn't. And I'm diving in there and I'm pulling bags out, and I have a lot of things in those. I haven't got any sitting handy. In those, the bags your duvets and stuff come in, I keep.
They're great. Those are great to keep.
Wonderful. I've got yarn in there, and I'm pulling them out, and I'm like, wow, didn't know that was there.
I know. And if you leave it long enough, I reckon you get over the feeling of being bored with it and back into the feeling of
falling in love with it again.
That's right, I actually do like this, because there's that dangerous time in the middle where you're just bored with it, and that's the risk, is that you'll get rid of it. Don't get rid of it, just hold on to it another few years.
Like a true dasher like me,
like a husband. No, I agree. And for me, quite selfishly, designing, to being able to, if I can just lift myself out of the need always to use the latest and greatest yarn that not everyone can get hold of, that opens the options up for me enormously. Absolutely. And so if I can teach people about why I've chosen the yarn I've chosen and what this yarn does and what might be a good substitute, for me, that makes it a much bigger playing field in terms of my own stash and what I can get hold of.
I've got a question here, and they're asking, what difference would it make to use a fingering weight yarn for kapua rather than 2 strands of lace weight?
Yep, you definitely can, and people have done that. So the thing that the 2 lace weights have done is that I've been able to hold the strand of mohair through with it, and it's a light fingering. It really is a lighter weight, but you could just substitute a fingering, and depending on the fingering you chose, you may not have that overall fluffy cloud puffiness, which this one does. You may go into more of a sleek look, and there are benefits to that, because the benefit would be that this patterning through the body would be a lot more pronounced. You would really see that it would become much more this overall lace, which is very muted in the fluff. But it would also just have a little more structure. It wouldn't flop in the same way. If you're not comfortable with something that's quite so sloppy, then that would work too. But yeah, I would definitely try it. The lovely thing about this kind of construction as well is it's really adaptable to swapping out a slightly different gauge. You can look at what gauge you've got and work out how wide this section is going to be, work out how many stitches you need, find a size in the pattern that has that, and then you can sub in a different sleeve really easily in a drop shoulder garment by just knitting to the length that you're after and then picking up that sleeve. So it's a really great construction to swap things out. Yeah, I like it. It's very flexible.
I like things I can fiddle around with. My on the spot question.
Yeah.
DK Timely.
I know.
How many years? How often have I asked that question, Libby? A lot.
I know, and I was actually. Was it the year before last?
Yeah,
it must have been. I was full steam ahead with the DK Timely. I actually had yarn, and I decided to go back to Kristen, who I got the original from, and we talked about colours and we talked about yarn. And I got some yarn and it wasn't working. I should have kept the swatch. I did have it for a while. I don't know what I've done with it. And I swatched the 2 colors that I had, and they were both, I hadn't realized, but the one that was meant to be plainer was also too variegated. And it ended up just being this complete jumble of stripes. So that's something to remember for Timely. It works well. It doesn't work better, but know that if you don't use a color that's neutral a plain, like a solid or a much less variegated yarn with your variegated yarn, you're going to lose the stripe. It'll just blend all in together, depending on the colours. So it kind of got a little bit shelved because I went back to her and said, let's talk about colours again. And then she changed bases. And then I got busy with something. But never say never. I really love these projects that use several colours. And now I'm thinking in terms of ways I can teach people alongside the garments. I am more inclined to experiment more with that kind of thing. So I should just do it, shouldn't I? I should just do it.
Dogmatician DK and a rainbow and stripes, just saying.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I might have to get some of that off you and have a little go with that, I think. I think I should get some of that off you anyway, have a go.
Yes. Well, it's always a pleasure. It's so good to be everyone to be able to see you. It's so much nicer than
good. Even though I'm like, my hair, I keep thinking I need to redo my hair. I look like what's through a bird's nest. It's a bird's nest. Went through a bush.
No, it looks fantastic. And we've had no dishes.
No dishes. I have heard noises, but it hasn't been too bad your end then.
No, not too bad. So, and I've had no dog bombing. So I think
do you think they're getting used to this new life? They're getting used to this. When Mum says don't be disturbed, that means Mum don't disturb Mum. Maybe it's sinking in a little bit.
Yeah, no. I'd love to say yes, but no. But no, we're going to definitely, because I mean, obviously we still have a couple more weeks of level 3. I am definitely going to be keeping some form of diary going once things get back to normal. So you and I think this is going to become a regular date because
that would be really nice.
You and I want to talk about shoulders.
Yes, I think we should talk about shoulders.
I think we can have a whole big conversation about shoulders. So. My camera keeps tipping back every time because I keep wobbling my desk and I just see myself going.
I've got my computer on an ironing board. It always gets a bit wobbly if I go near
it. So we're going to talk about that very, very soon. But thank you for taking the time today. It's it's
my pleasure.
So good to see you. And thank you for everybody for joining us and asking you questions. I've tried to make sure that I've put all the links that I can in there for you so you can actually check these out. And
I can see all the yes, just do a DK timely. Yes, just do it. I can see them in the comments. All right, I will.
No pressure. No pressure.
I'll just slip it in. You know, I have now got in the lock because I had to put myself in the second little we have this funny, right? I have a laundry that we don't use, so I've turned it into my office. I was in there last time I talked to you, and on the wall, I had this space on the wall. So when I got myself a new desk and a chair, I got a great big whiteboard, huge whiteboard. And now I have all the months of the year up there so I can see what's coming. So I'll just have to add that in somehow and then just pray for more time.
So I know exactly what it's like. I have exactly the same thing in my office, and I have all the product development up there, and I have all these things. And sometimes it's like...
I know, but I feel so much better having it all out there. It's like, oh, thank goodness. I don't have to think about it. It's just there now.
It's there. And you know, it was actually Michael Hill. I saw an interesting interview with Michael Hill the other day, and he is a big proponent of goal setting. And he says you've got to write the goals down and you've got to have them up there and you've got to see them. And he said a lot of people will do small short-term goals, but he said you actually have to have those really big, crazy, insane, lofty goals.
Yeah.
And you have that written up there. And I do. And every now and then someone will come in and go, what's that? And I'm like, that's the crazy goal. And
I find it useful to put it up and then you can work backwards and then it feels manageable to get there. I heard something interesting the other day. Someone was talking about thinking about something unachievable. Put something in your mind that's unachievable and see if you can just have a go at it. And I thought that was and I was thinking, what's unachievable? Okay, well, maybe I'll just put the idea out there just loosely and then see if it's like a looser idea, but it was like a big thing. Don't just always do things that are totally manageable. Try something big and crazy and completely unachievable as well.
This camera's driving me crazy.
No, your camera.
Must
be time to go.
It must be time to go. There we go. It's a sign. It's sign.
Must be. It's the sign.
All righty. Thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. It has been an utter joy. There we go. I'm off. Let's go. Take care, Libby, and I will be back again. Bye, and I will be back again tomorrow here with the Quarantine Diaries, day 30. Woohoo! Let's celebrate. We'll see you then. Bye.